Councilwoman Winterbauer did let me know that she was out of town this weekend, or this week, and I have not heard from Councilman Braden. Last night I thought he said he was coming, so I'm hoping he's just on his way. And then we have two city admin who are joining us this evening. And no one has come, so we'll try to ask lots of questions. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nick if you want to give us the lowdown.
That's great. Thank you for the time. Nick Wingenfelter with PLK Communities. I'm on behalf tonight of PLK as well as our partner Bergen Health for the redevelopment of what we refer to as Montgomery and Maple. So it's the former Quality Inn site there at the corner of Montgomery and Maple. I will give you a quick overview on who our partner is. So our partner for this project is going to be a group called Bergen Health. They're out of Indianapolis, and they are about 25,000 units, so 2.5 times our size and about $4 billion in assets. So pretty significant background, pretty healthy background in what we call the more affordable space. And I'll get into what our target and our goal is for this project and how we got here. So stepping back a little bit, we really wanted to rethink what this could be. So when we were working with our Factory 52 development, a lot of the comments we heard is like, how do we make some, housing for seniors? How do we create something that's more affordable? What are our options? So the parcel itself, I'll kind of jump over here. This site is actually, that side of the road is what's called a QCT or Qualified Census Tract. So when they redid the maps, I think it was probably last year or two, that all of a sudden this parcel got carved into this new area. So what does this mean for us? So historically, tax credits are done at a 4% or a 9% rate. 9% are very competitive, and typically that's what you see downtown, what might be like a 50 unit maximum. And what we say is, well, we don't want to do 50 units. We don't really want to be competitive. What else can we do? So under the 4% credit, if you're in a qualified tract, they actually give you a bonus, which puts you closer to 8%. So it allows us to have a much more competitive project, to do something at a little bit more scale. We're targeting 174 units here, and really figure out a better way to create a solution everyone can be happy with. So from a high level, what we wanted to do was find somebody comfortable with that space. The other thing is this, we always get a question of, can you guys do affordable? How does this work? Well, there's a form called an 8609 form, and I'm gonna botch how it all works a little bit. But basically, if you've never developed an affordable housing project, you're not allowed to develop an affordable housing project. So therein lies the circle of how do we actually qualify to do this? So when we had people reaching out to us, our first pre-qualifier was, listen, long-term, we'd love to do more of this in our market. We just don't have the qualifications. So we started out with who will JV the deal with us to allow us to be qualified at the end to go ahead and continue to do more in the region and really help create an additional player in the market in that space. So the Bergen Health team was definitely open to that. And so what we did was we came up with a JV deal where we're 50-50 in the transaction. And together, we're going to learn the process to be able to continue to replicate it here in the region, as well as have a really solid partner working alongside us. So I will kind of comment on, I've heard this a few times about the Frisch's. So we actually know Frisch's landlord pretty well. We've spent close to 2.5 years now working with them. That site had cross easements across the whole property. So we came to an agreement with them that if we create a new curb cut and lane, which we've got, I think it's permitted now through the city, it should be done, as well as a traffic study, that we could actually allow their parcel to be cut off. So that way, if they ever did fail, this was again 2.5 years ago, that they had the ability to redevelop that down the road. So they've agreed to remove all the easements to allow us to build. In return, we have to put that road in place. We're also working with the city because they're going to put a new, I believe it's a water extension down the road as well. So our goal would be to get all that work started this year and get the road extension in, and then we have a way to stage and develop on the property. So the property itself, we'll give a quick overview of what it is. It's zone CBD. So as you can kind of see here, there's really no height limits, a minimum of 3 stories. Front setbacks are 10 feet maximum. Obviously, it's a business district, so we're going to want to build as close to the street as we can and really make it fit in. And really, there's no side setbacks or any other requirements. So it's a very favorable zoning, which means it won't be going back before council. But we felt it was important to at least talk to the housing committee because obviously we're still working with the city. We had an agreement beforehand to do it as market rate. Now that we're switching it over, we're going to do that same agreement in the 55 plus housing. So what are we looking to do? We're looking to build 55 plus housing. A lot of what we heard is, there's a lot of people here that were fixed income, former union workers, things like that need a housing option. And so that's what we wanted to create. It'll be in 2 buildings with 5 stories on Montgomery and 4 stories on the backside on Station. So it steps down as it goes down the street. There'll be a mix of 2s and 1s because 55 plus, you're not allowed to build a lot of bigger units. It still is a maximum. So anywhere between, I'll walk through the units in a bit, 700 and 1,000 square feet, roughly a piece. And those are for people on fixed incomes at 50 to 70% of the county AMI. So what does that relate to? So including your utilities, you have to be over 55 on a fixed income, and your rent all in with your utilities is roughly $975 all the way up to $1,300 for the largest units. So one of the things we're actually doing to do that is we're going to put a lot of solar into this, and they've done a lot of solar canopies as well, whether it's parking structures, things like that. So we're going to try to find every way possible to maximize the ability for residents to reduce their expenses and utilities. So everything will be thought through on how that person on a fixed income has an option. I will say for me personally, my mom was a government worker. She's on a pension, and I've had to deal with this where she moved after she retired. So it's definitely been a focus for a lot of people right now with inflation and everything. How do we have an opportunity to stay in our neighborhood and then stay at a certain rent? And it really, at those kind of rent thresholds, it makes something much more palatable. If you get a nice 700 square foot, 1 bedroom under 1,000, including your utilities, it definitely gives people an opportunity to have something here. The cost of the project is about $56 million. So how do we get there? So really, once you get the tax credits, and we'll have a tax credit investor, we've actually made an active request to the county for $6.5 million in county funds. That is currently in process. And we've also reached out to the Port Authority and are working with them on issuing the bonds to help finance it. Because unlike a market rate deal, which is what we develop, we're not really the end owner. We are the steward of the property until it's completed, and then we would own it at the end of the credit period. But we purely are building this to have the right product delivered. They're buying out our land, and we get a minimal management fee until 15 to 30 years out. So again, really for us, it was about how do we put this parcel to use. We're basically recovering our costs, and we're putting what we think is something better back into the community.
Nick, the 6.5 mil from the county, what pot of funding is that from?
I can't answer that one exactly.
Okay.
I know we use CDF as who's managing it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the one thing, and I have them kind of sending me some info as well, that is one consistent bill for your residents, so they pay 1 bill a month. So it's housing, utilities, everything.
Included.
Yeah.
And it is the 50 to 70 Hamilton County, and I just want folks at home to know that it is slightly higher than City of Norwood's AMI, but that's pretty consistent that folks use county.
Yeah, the Ohio Housing Finance Agency sets that minimum for us. So how do we get to a design? So we're still very early in the process, but I wanted to kind of walk through what we're thinking. So we actually started with some historic images. The left side and the right side are actually both at that intersection, or were historically at that intersection of Montgomery and Maple. Top right was actually inside the pharmacy that was there. We found one of those photos with the Inquirer. Bottom middle was actually the Quality Inn right after it opened. So kind of use some of those as initial design inspirations. And thinking back to, like, you have arch windows, what else do we look at? Still a very open process in how we're going to get there, but wanted to just at least show how we're starting, and then kind of like what type of materials are we going to use. So understanding that this is the business district, we will need a heavier percentage of brick, stone, just materials that speak to what we're doing. When we originally looked at this, the city and the county, city and the port were both like, can you help redevelop the site? Because we know you'll take care of the business district. So we've been really specific on making sure that it does warrant what the business district is and doesn't detract. It really enhances and adds to it. So again, looking at traditional materials you might see, you will see some fiber cement, say over 25, 30 feet high, things like that. Once you go over a certain height, it's really hard to get full brick. It starts to become the thin brick. So we'll work through that with the city and make sure the design palette is compatible.
Nick, one thing that I know you and I have talked about before, and it's pretty important to me, is the outdoor space and porches or balconies. I know that everything at Factory 52 has a balcony. Will that be a possibility in this site?
Every unit will not have balconies, but we will have balconies. So what we're looking at is, can you have a community balcony, or do certain units have balconies depending on where they're at in a building? So what we'll have is, because we are building this, a zero lot line on the street, you usually aren't allowed to cantilever over to the street on your balconies. So we're going to have to work through the right percentage of balconies, but that is something we've definitely relayed to the design team, like what is the minimum threshold? Also, when OFA looks at the design, they want to make sure it's all sustainable long-term materials on the exterior. Sometimes balconies are viewed as with wood materials, things like that. It's not, it's a lot more maintenance. So there will be a little bit of pushback. So it's a kind of give and take.
Okay.
But I agree with you. I think balconies are very valuable, and that's why we've put them on every unit we've built.
Thank you.
Again, site layout right here. So this shows top left corner is the zoning map. This shows that it's the CBD zoning. This is the road we've been actively working on and completed our traffic study for. Two structures. You have the primary structure up here on Montgomery Road. It's a little darker in the front for two reasons. One, we're still finishing the environmental cleanup. So part of what we're doing there is that will actually be the amenity spaces, not the true living spaces. And then the other thing is we wanted to make sure, because it's a business district, there's more storefront glass to make it feel like it fits in and it's not truly just a residential ground floor. So on the main road, again, it's commercial. On the back side would be more your residential style units. This is parked a little over a 1-to-1, which is typical for this type of unit. And you would also, what we are still currently exploring is, do we have any parking out on Montgomery Road? In our last plan, when we worked with the city, we'd actually done some angled back-in parking. That section of Montgomery is really wide, and that's why people drive too fast. I know somebody was killed around 2020. I believe they're crossing in a wheelchair. We've had a lot of issues. So we would still like to do some type of buffer out there, whether that's striping or doing something else. I also know that the fire department struggles at a shift change. So is it possibly like that they might have some spaces, or just another way that we can help alleviate that pressure? The other thing is too, because the fire department parks on Maple, they currently have 2 curb cuts. We've gone down to 1. We did float the preliminary site plan by the chief on Monday. I still owe him some additional follow-ups. But what we're going to try to do is make sure that this is all compliant with how the fire department would want to access both of the sites. So what I will say is, right now, the current curb cut's kind of a little bit of an elbow on the Maple side. I think we're going to have to adjust that. But again, we're working through the basic site plan, unit counts, things like that. Our application to the state does not require a full design. So what we're submitting to them is basically, you could do a schematic, site plan, things like that, while we're actively working through it. But because it is non-competitive, we won't stop the design process. It's just a matter of getting all the final details in. Yes, sir.
Getting back to the height for both buildings, are they both 4 stories or?
The front building on the main road is 4/1. So you'll have 5 stories on the Montgomery side. The lower side will be 4 stories.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, again, just getting back to, you're placed in an unfortunate predicament with regards to Frisch's, which led to the Crown Avenue extension, which led to, again, this unfortunate now residual lot to the rear. And then even if it was going to be some sort of future commercial pad, that was like less desirable than just owning the whole thing or not being forced into putting the road. Now I see, okay, it's mostly going to be parking. Has there been any thoughts maybe seeking a higher building height and have a better utilization of the main footprint, and then at least trying to salvage the use of that other lot for more bona fide commercial use or whatever versus just parking?
Understand completely where you're going. Is there, because we've definitely,
Yeah,
we've looked at 2 buildings, one, or like, how do we, so the couple things we deal with, I think there's 14 feet of grade change from the Montgomery side to the station side.
Yeah.
So we've even looked at, like, do you build a building and then step it down? The problem is with the age restricted, we really need to concentrate it to like 1 floor level, which is what they were coming back at. But we've even looked at the Frisch's. I'd love to buy it, but I know they're in at over $4 million. That's not worth it. I mean, because they bought a triple net lease. It's just, it's not going to happen unless.
I'm sorry, they did what on the lease?
So what it is, that is an institutional owner, and they're basically buying a cash flow stream. So when they bought the Frisch's portfolio, it's called a triple net REIT. So that means triple net. So it's net of your taxes, net of common charges, net of everything. So the land, so you as a property owner, basically think of it as a ground lease. You own the ground only. They take care of everything on top of it.
Okay.
So they were guaranteed an income stream for say 30 years. And they probably used an insurance policy, something to buy it. And because of that, they paid a present value for this income stream. The problem is the business went out of business. So the income stream is zero. So now they're stuck with a land at a much higher land basis than anybody can afford.
Well, is there
Mike?
any thought waiting it out? Sorry.
No, you're good.
Just waiting up, because of that, it seems sad to kind of, both yourself and now your new partner, utilizing the land for that marginal value, as opposed to,
You might get a call back every 6 months on a good day.
Yeah.
I don't think that's best to continue to sit on it when we have an active site ready to be built. I understand where you're coming from. I think that the other option is eventually, if that wants to be redeveloped and you're not using the parking at the same ratios, maybe you look at saying, can that be a part of the other development?
Yeah.
But again, if you go down that site, I mean, their parking level is over 10 feet taller. So it basically falls off a cliff. We actually have to have a retaining wall in there to support the parking. So I hear what you're saying. I just don't know if there's a better, I don't know if there's a better solution. And I'm not going to wait forever. I mean, we're just carrying land and you don't make money with it just sitting on the balance sheet.
And I'm sorry, I feel like I blanked out for a minute. Were you saying that there will be commercial on the first floor, or it will just have more commercial feel?
They'll have a commercial appearance. If you look at some of these, they have like what's called a storefront glass.
Yes.
So it can be our gym, it can be the community center. It'll look active like a business. So if you're walking by, it doesn't look like somebody's home.
Living room.
Living room, correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm glad I asked it. Clarify.
kind of tagging on to your comment, would this have like internal cafeteria or eating facilities or any of that sort? No.
No, I mean, it'll be a traditional 55 plus apartment.
Okay.
There will be community rooms, but it is not assisted living, any of those type of amenities. That is interior palette, so very nice modern kitchens, things like that. This is just our initial inspiration board. And then maybe a little bit of a look of these, see if I can zoom in on them at all or not. Not me. So we kind of have a few different layouts here. Some of these you'll see where they have balconies outside. Season, it just depends on the unit type. So we have a traditional corner unit of a one bedroom, 730 square feet. So much larger than you might see a one bedroom built in a market rate project right now. They're closer to 650. So a little bit larger again, because everything you have to think about here is you'll have to have doors wide enough for wheelchairs. We'll have to make sure things are accessible for all units versus a market rate. There's a percentage we have to meet.
So it will be 100% ADA?
It will have to meet all the OFA guidelines for whatever that is. I don't know about all the accessibility requirements to be fully knowledgeable there.
And I'm sorry, OFA, Ohio
Housing Finance Aid Authority, I believe. It's basically the tax credit authority.
If you say the letters, it sounds different in my head than if you sound the letters.
Sorry, you're good.
It's all good.
Yeah, so we have the two different
She's
kinds.
translating.
You have a traditional one bedroom there at the 700, and I'll show you the other one down here, and they'll all be online as well. You have a traditional two bedroom here, so a larger two bedroom unit, because there is a mix of 35% twos. About 1,000 square feet. That is a market rate two bedroom, so right in line with what we would build.
The bedroom's like 10 by 11?
They should be 10 by 12. Yeah,
Okay.
10 by 11 in that one. The
So
larger
those are
ones,
nice size bedrooms.
11 foot 10 by 11 too.
My current apartment's about 700 square feet.
Really?
Yeah, if you want like a
Nice.
mental picture.
And then what you have is, again, some of the corner units, again, have balconies on them as well. So it just depends where they are in the building itself. And this is, again, another two bedroom unit right at that 1,020 square feet. So we will build the balconies into the development, and they just won't be on every unit.
Cool.
So, I say that's kind of a high level of what we're looking to do right now, how they kind of lay out in the grids, and our hope is in the next, 30 to 60 days to truly get a true rendering and schematic. But given that it doesn't come back in front of council, we wanted just to make sure we're answering questions and let everybody see that. Yes, ma'am.
It's been many years since dealt with like a tax credit financing option, but my understanding of some of them or most of them had the requirement that after 15 years, they would have to provide at least the tenant option to purchase. So I don't know what this would be, have a similar arrangement?
Not on a rental.
Okay. But the other ones were, I've dealt with the same thing. It was rental property, but after that 15-year, it was baked into the tax financing law. So
I think that's what they're doing up in Silverton. Did they end up doing that with the land?
that's why I thought like, this is from Pennsylvania, but I thought across the board because of the state, federal.
Yeah.
They would have to bake that into.
We as an owner have the right to buy it after 15 years.
Okay. Check into that. It's something like.
It's not a for sale,
Yeah.
like a condominium. You can't force us to convert it to a
Yeah, I don't know, check into that, because that was one of the big things, it was one of the selling points for the last one I dealt with, which was like 7 years ago,
I'll verify that, circle back.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I kind of have. Like I say, just want to make sure I brought that up to everybody, address any questions, and then
Yeah, can you go back to one of the picture of the blueprint of the building? Yes, that one. Okay, so this top of the picture behind Frisch's, that space, that's parking lot for the structure.
yeah, they're going to be a
And-
parking lot and potentially a smaller dog park or something there in the middle.
Okay,
And then we also have some amenity space down here where the southern part could be more of a dog park as well.
okay. What is, and I feel like I should know this, what are our parking minimums in Norwood?
It's
And-
for multifamily?
Yes.
Yeah, so for multifamily, our required is 1 per 1.
Okay,
But I
that's
think
not,
typically developers try to get anywhere between 1.2 to 1.34 per dwelling unit.
but with 55 and up.
We're at 1.1 to 1.
Okay.
They typically try to get 0.75 to 1.
Oh.
You see more people use buses it's just a lower car
Yes.
driver ratio, but we are planning 1 to 1, which is in line with code.
And this is, I mean, that's one of the goals, I think, is to have this right on our, everything should be walkable. You can walk to Kroger, you can walk to the bus stop. In terms of, there's not going to be a need for stairs from that back parking lot, will there? Because
shouldn't be.
that is the same level, the whole back space is low, right?
So right now, there's a sidewalk on the Maple side that you could walk up
Okay.
currently. So we would just use the same grade. You're right, it is a little bit steeper on Crown. That's where you see kind of the grade changes here.
Okay,
But our
that's what that
intention
is.
is not to have steps there.
Okay. And then solar would be rooftop solar?
Typically rooftop solar, and then if we can do some mounted, it would be in this northern parcel somehow.
Like the zoo.
Very much like the zoo.
Oh, awesome. And then, in terms of landscaping and trees and that kind of thing, and I know this is very preliminary, but what thoughts do you have in terms of that?
Given us in a business district, we know that we're going to redo the tree wells out here. What does that look like? We just need to see. I think there's some remnants of grass that maybe wasn't from the last development. So we'll obviously try to do the tree wells and plants, but maybe not the grass strips. We'll try to concentrate our grass towards the sides and rear over here. I can't specifically answer what those trees are yet. We're just not
Okay.
that far along.
Okay. And then basically that Frisch's site, and I know this is asking you to magic, crystal ball. Do you think with this development that might push something to happen there, or might this just sort of continue to sit like that for a,
I've called their chief counsel 3 times since December without a phone call back.
okay, that's your crystal ball. Fair.
I usually get a call back pretty quick. I haven't.
Feels like that's the mojo of that
That's what's going on.
space.
Yeah, we don't know.
People don't like to return calls from this space.
Yeah, we actually flew down to Orlando to meet with them 4 different times to get the last deal done, because that was about the only way to get somebody tracked down.
Fun. So this current design does not have any of the parking along the street, but that might come later.
So right now you see the parallels on the Montgomery side.
Oh, that's
What we've talked about is, do we actually bump it out and do like an angled space? Do we do something else that's allows traffic to slow down? I know there's a specific plan. We have not designed for any changes yet, but we're assuming something will need to be done there.
Okay. They also know Montgomery Road's going to be under construction shortly. How do you anticipate, or do you anticipate that impacting your work?
No, I mean, it's a major artery.
Right.
Yeah, we'll work around it.
You
At this
figure it
point,
out, right.
we're gonna be doing site work, so say they can actually get started late summer. Your site work and foundations for 4 to 6 months, probably not doing any sticks until next spring.
Another question, and I was trying to do the math and it's not working. Actually, Tim, this might be one for you. If the 50 to 70% of AMA, I can figure out what that income ratio is, but not what rent would be. That was more math than I can do.
So I think it's 78.6 maybe, does that sound right? It's around $78,000 is 100% AMI. And you do say 50% then will be around $38,000-$39,000 of what the area median income is. And then you would pay 30% of that towards your rent.
Okay.
So that's 30% maximum on the rent
Can you do the
calculation.
30% of 30?
That's 11,700.
11,000.
Divided by 12 months is your 975.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was not going to happen anytime soon. So, so about 975 for, is it the
That's the
one bedroom?
limit.
The 50% range, yeah. So there's some at
Okay.
50, some at 60. It all depends. They hold so many units, it varies, but they'll be, say, 50% or the 50% range, and then they tier them up from there.
Okay.
975, including utilities, is pretty reasonable
Oh, good.
as a renter. As a current renter.
Yeah. Going rates for 1 bedrooms are pretty high right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah. My last efficiency was 425. And then that was my gas and electric bill.
That was
in my-
efficiency?
In my 100-year-old
Your
house.
studios are 1,000, right? Factory 52? Or no, they're more than that now, right?
I want to say our studios are around 1,400,
They're 400 square feet.
440.
I mean, yeah, but I was last in an apartment 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Which is still lower than most of the market, actually. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you have any questions as tax commissioner?
I do not. I was here as a resident, just curious as to what's going on down the street from my
I
house.
love that you are both.
That was it.
You are a concerned neighbor and our tax guy.
So,
It sounds like you'll
this
have
one
to.
directly impacts me, you know?
Absolutely.
Right down the
Yeah,
way.
shortcut.
Yeah, I walk the dog by there every day.
And so the other thing, when I'm thinking about affordability and also this property is sort of the building in Norwood, or it will be the real, I think it can have a real visual impact as well as an economic impact. And that's 174 more folks going to our shops, walking to our businesses. They still have income.
Yeah, they might. Some of them still might have income tax if they're working. If they're not on a fixed income. Well, I guess everyone.
Well, even on a fixed income, you
everyone's
pay
technically
taxes.
on a. True. I was gonna say everyone's technically on a fixed income.
Yeah.
I'm on a fixed income. I have one job.
So then your next step for this is, do you have to go back to planning commission? Is that the next?
to our knowledge right now, I don't believe we have a reason to go back.
Okay.
So we talked to see, I think the one thing, the only open item was, do they need to modify the original development agreement to say, because the original development agreement had like 6,000 square feet of retail. The question is, do we need to take it out? It appears to be a nominal change. I know they were doing a little bit of homework, but provided that doesn't need anything, we're going to continue going forward as we are.
Okay. And the dream is to break ground this spring?
No, so if they are awarded the credit, we're likely starting around July.
July 20, wow.
Mm-hmm. A lot to do.
Yeah. This is really exciting. This, for years, people have said, what's happening with Quality Inn? And now that we have this coming out of the ashes of that, it's really exciting. And the mediation with the site is all,
The only work
Managed.
remaining is actually on city property.
say that again?
So the only impacts that are left to clean up sit underneath the sidewalk and the parallel parking right now.
So it's city property, yeah.
Is that something, to your knowledge, we will be addressing as we,
We have it planned for us to do. Because
That would
I
be
imagine
nice.
we're tearing it up anyway, and if we're gonna tear it up, we've probably, I'm just guessing here, probably put 15 to 20 holes in the ground to know if you'd walk by there, you can actually see where the concrete might be broken. So we've it's called delineated it down to a pretty finite area of impact, and it's no more than 10 to 12 feet deep. The reason we didn't do it already was we didn't want to tear up the sidewalk, and at one point we looked at, you do tuck under parking, something else, and all of a sudden you'd have this hole and it's not stable. So it made sense to push that off until completion.
awesome.
I'm sure we won't put you on a cleanup. I know I got this question previously. Do you plan to create a DORA district with the 55 and up housing that goes to Factory 52? I think I got asked that as recently as like 3 months ago
Oh.
by a resident.
A DORA district?
They're all very, I've heard
No.
many concerns about a DORA.
There's no DORA on this property.
Right.
So what you might be confusing is there's an entertainment district.
Right, I know we
So, yeah.
included this in
In
there.
case some retail went there.
I guess my
Yeah.
question, yeah, people were concerned in the future, there might be some DORA application. But I don't anticipate a lot of drinking and walking between
Well,
these
there's
properties
no
now.
selling of alcohol on the site, and I don't think you can have a DORA where you don't sell.
Well, you could get, well, we added it to the entertainment district, so you could have liquor
Yeah,
licenses there.
you
But
could
if
have a
there's no
liquor license.
businesses,
But there's not a business to
Yeah.
have.
Correct.
yes.
Yeah.
I just want to make that
Oh,
clear.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
This is
sorry.
more for the audience
Got
than
it.
myself, in case these questions come up later.
So the only DORA that we've discussed is actually at Factory
At
52
Factory
proper.
52.
And honestly, the way the liquor laws are right now since COVID, we don't need it. We are allowed to be on your own property, so we've
Yes.
never basically enacted it.
Great.
But that would be the only place it would be.
I just wanted, in case anyone was concerned at home at a later point in time. Or,
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I don't have any other questions. Anything?
No, are you comfortable with sharing this to the mayor and NOAA if you go?
Yes.
Copy? Okay.
Yeah, and like I say, we were just waiting on a couple of things. We did talk to the chief this week, and we'll get it. He wanted some updated building heights and things like that to verify a few items as well.
Yeah.
But yes, I have no problem sharing that over.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you all.
thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Appreciate the time.
And there are no community comments, so we will end the meeting. Thank you, Steve.